Welcome to the 5-Year-Old and Me Show. I'm Coco Brown, lifestyle diva and author of Mikasa Blerd Lines Book One, and I have the incomparable Bree Nachelle with me here today, aka Baroness Bree. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, hello, and thank you for that intro. I am a podcaster. I am a mother. I'm a social media digital strategist and a up and coming author. I'm finishing up my book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When I met you, I was very impressed with the program you were providing to help other digital creators expand and just strategize their business. And I was impressed also by the brands that you're associated with and how you get people to connect with brands to expand their business. Tell me, what made you start and what did you start with? Did you start as the strategist? Did you start as the podcaster? How did you start?
I started as just Bree. I've always been curious, and for a period of time I worked at NASA. And
Okay.
I started out as an executive assistant and took training and moved into a budget role and then took more training and moved into a strategy role. And then one day I was like, I don't want to do any of this. I love social media. Moved in, took some more training, moved into a social media role, and I've been doing this now for about 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So wait, how did NASA find you? Or how did you find NASA?
I was a temp. I applied. I went on a temp assignment back in the day. You would get a phone call telling you a company needed an assistant for a day. You would put your little jacket on and go into a jump company and work at the desk for a couple hours. And I got assigned NASA somehow. And I'm like, did they want me? You sure? Like, are you? And they're like, yeah, go. And so I went as a contractor. I was there for a year. They took my little short assignment, made it a year-long assignment, and then they said, "Hey, some other jobs opening up. Would you want to apply and stay?" And I was like, "Okay." So I applied and I selected, and I was there for 15 years.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So the strategy part, the strategist, do you think that's something that comes naturally to you?
I think I think a lot of women are strategists naturally. We can just figure stuff out. If there's a problem, if there's something going on, for me, I've always had to find a solution. My mom passed when I was very young, so I was always like in an adult role is the best way to say it. Now I think the therapy road for is parentification. And there were things I just had to figure out as a kid, learning how to cook, helping my dad around the house, doing little things. There were decisions that had to be made. And so for me, that was just a natural step for me when I found out that, oh, people get paid to do what I've been doing my whole life. I can be a strategist and help people figure out the next step. I've been very blessed with being able to see an entire staircase for a solution. It's not
Mm.
just one way out. It's not just one thing to do things. There's always another way to get around or out of a situation. So to be able to say, oh, there's a class for that. There's a certification for that. It's called Lean Six Sigma. What? So I'm taking these classes with all these people and I'm learning all these things and I'm like, oh, I just knew how to do that. Cool. So now I have a certification and things that just came naturally.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you're a podcaster also. So what made you step into this realm of podcasting?
Podcasting came to me as I realized I was elevating everyone else's voice. I
Mm.
didn't do anything for my own. No one knew who I was, no one knew what I did, and I was just this lady who could do all of these things and couldn't
Mhm.
communicate it. So it became an outlet for me. I got divorced in 2014 and I wanted to just start talking to other people who were going through transition so they could tell their stories, unsung voices that never also got to be heard. And I'm talking to all these bad people, like baddies, like they're scientists and engineers and, and corporation builders, and no one had ever heard of them. And so it helped to motivate me that my story also mattered. So started it out of service to others, and it ended up
Hmm.
being in service of myself.
Oh, no. Okay. Okay. So how do you tie that in with the digital brand strategy that you provide to people?
Well, podcasting is part of digital brand strategy.
Right.
And I was just learning it as being curious and wandering into it. I was like, oh, I can put this in my pocket. This is another media tool that we can use to grow brands. This is another addition to your outlet, which you can sell. I mean, podcasting is turned into a major industry. When I first
Yes.
started podcasting, everybody and their mama just was going in their kitchens making podcasts. And now it's part of a brand strategy. So you almost need a podcast to be heard long term, to extend your knowledge to people for a low barrier of entry to meet people. Like it's like being on a
Mhm.
radio show. It's the easiest way to meet people. People love podcasting. They podcast more than they listen to podcasts more than they read books now. So this was a skill, a marketing skill that I really did unintentionally jumped into, not realizing it would be part of my broader toolkit moving forward.
Okay. Okay, so talk about your creative breakthrough, the guided journaling experience for creators.
Ooh. The creative breakthrough came from the pandemic.
Mm,
Um, the Lord told all of us to sit still if we liked it or not. So, some people saw it as being trapped in their houses. I saw it as a chance to reset and learn something new. So it's like,
yeah.
okay, I'm in the house by myself. I actually like my children. I'm using, Zoom as a tool to communicate with friends and family. It's like, let me figure out something else. So I started taking mindfulness-based stress reduction classes
Wow.
and learning how to breathe and learning what to do when you're stressed out. Everyone was losing their minds, losing it. And I'm like, how can I become calm? I belong to a group. Excuse me, let me say that again. I belong to I belong to a group called Dear Grown A Women. It's been defunct, but I
Wow.
was there as an ambassador, and they were like, "Hey, Bree, do you want to do some fun events online that could make people happy?" And I
Mm,
started coloring parties. And
nice.
so every like once a month, we would get together and color, and people would just pour their guts out while they were coloring and tell you all their business. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is a therapy tool."
Right.
And so then I started creating spaces for people to color. And
Okay.
from that, I started doing them on my own time when the group went away. Then there's a
Okay.
convention I go to called BlerdCon, which is a African American cosplay convention. And we started to offer coloring and conversations in 2022. And every year we get bigger. And the first year it was just a handful of people, but then I turned around and they were sitting on the floor. They were handed people
Wow.
tearing their coloring books up to hand it to each other to sit down and talk to
Oh,
each
wow.
other. So last year, we had it again. They gave us a room twice as large as the room we had the year before. And again, people were sitting on floors, taking coloring books. I'm giving people my coloring supplies out of my toolkit. And I was
Yeah.
just overwhelmed with how much people connected with this activity that brought me so much joy as a child. So, no, coloring really helps people to open up. It
Hmm.
I have a new workbook that I'm finishing up now because I was selected to do the BlerdCon 2025 conference. And I'm going to come this year with bigger and better tools. So I have a whole
Nice.
new coloring book I've developed, and I'm going to make it a little larger, make it more
Hmm.
customized for people of color, Black people. And I want us to, if coloring makes us happy, I'm gonna give you all the coloring you want.
Oh, that's nice. Wow. Something so simple
Hmm.
that really opens people up and brings them joy or at least lets them release. That's pretty profound. And you wouldn't think so from something that we did so freely as children just to pass time, you know?
It's such a blessing to be able to reconnect with your inner child.
Yes, that's so true. That's so true. So, in saying that, but first, I want to speak to the mindfulness spot because you have that also, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, I actually went and got mindfulness-based stress reduction certified. I'm a
Oh,
certified women's circle facilitator,
okay.
and I've used that to connect with people. I use that to build my digital strategies to understand how I can reach people at their core. Um, I realized that there were ways for me to serve people and actually heal people as I serve.
Wow.
And I want to be able to connect with people and tell their stories in a way that really reaches with an audience so they just don't feel like they're being sold to.
Right.
And the mindfulness part of that as well is how can I reach people and help them see the greater good in themselves? How can I help people to build community? So many people, especially Black people, the people who love us the most don't see us as who we want to be in the future.
Right.
And the mindfulness-based stress reduction has helped me to tap into that comfort zone for people and say, hey, no, you
Mhm.
can do that stuff. You're worthy of all of these things. Um, let's talk about it. And I'd use the skills I've used there to just open and foster community. I do guided journaling. I teach guided journaling. I'm actually overdue to teach a session. I've been working on finishing up some projects, but at one point in time I was teaching monthly courses for free. You hop online, we journal together, we talk through everything you journaled if you choose to share. If not,
Right.
people DM me after and talk to me through DMs, or they can book a
Mhm.
session. And people have changed the trajectories of some of their careers based on
Wow.
recognizing that they were missing some of the pieces that I just prayed and meditated on. It's like, okay, God, tell me, what am I supposed to be talking to these people about today? And I would sit still for like 3 hours and all
Wow.
these words and topics and things. And I'm like,
Hmm.
ooh, this is coming up for me. Maybe I should talk to other people about it. I come up with a group of questions. We journal through it. And I mean, also give people an action plan at the end of every session. So what they don't
Wow.
realize is as you're doing the journaling exercises at the end, you have all the answers to the solution of the topic of the day.
Mm.
So, and if people need strategy, I help them to figure that out. But that's a gift that I've been given. I didn't know it was a gift. I didn't know it was something I was just doing for free as
Right.
my whole life. And so now I get a lot of joy from helping people find solutions to their problems through mindfulness based work.
Yeah. That's awesome and powerful. So tell me, what did you want to be when you were younger? What were you thinking you would do?
When I was 5, I was going to be a ballerina.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay. And as you got older, like I guess high school, preparing for college, what were you thinking about?
I still wanted to be a ballerina, but I want to also study art history.
Okay. Okay. And what do you do when you study art history? What do you become? What's your career path?
At the time, I either wanted to be an artist or a museum curator.
Okay. Okay. Now, is that an easy field to get into?
It is not an easy field to get into. It's greatly educated. I just remember researching it as a kid, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. And my dad's like, you're going to be, hungry. You can't do that. This is not where we go. It's also that limitation of fear because this is not what Black people did as careers, is what we were told. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. I'll be a secretary and type up these memos. But I worked some really amazing places that took me to meet these kinds of curators and museum
Wow.
artists and things of that nature. So I still love going to the museum. That is what I do on the crazy days when I can't think. I still go and sit and read and research my favorite artists. It's a great pastime, maybe in my next life, if I want to go get another certification, I can still
Right.
do those things.
Right. Wow. So when we look at some of the fields that we don't naturally find ourselves in, I guess you would say if you could go back and talk to that 5-year-old girl or seven or wherever you were at that point where you said, I want to be a museum curator, like with other fields, we kind of start doing it young and then we can find ourselves where we want to be.
Hmm.
But if you don't have that nudge or that person to say, well, go to the museum and maybe intern, or if you know someone, it helps to have a community that can nurture that or can speak to that, if somebody in your household isn't speaking to it.
Absolutely, there's a way to do anything you want to do without limitation. And Ballerina Bree still secretly exists. I still love to dance. Occasionally I'll get hit with the bug, but life happens. I have kids. I want
Yeah,
to pay and invest in their own passions. Ballet is
right.
expensive. So,
Yes.
but yeah, no, I fully love going to ballet classes as a grown person with my ballet shoes and
Nice.
still going from time to time for different open houses events. Maybe one day my knees will stop creaking and I can do it again a little bit more frequently. The museum thing, I absolutely one of my best friends is now well, not best, but closest friends is a museum curator. And
Oh, wow.
I get to see things through their lens and go to all these artsy
Mm,
events and see art from the other side. But then I now also see the funding issue the arts have. I also see the
yes.
political issues artists have. And to get to be in that circle, just an outsider looking in is so different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I picked the right path for me because I would be fighting all the time trying to figure out where to get money for my artists. But
Yes.
to see the beauty of the art and how many different types of art. And I went to a art installation in the cemetery this summer. Like there's just so many different ways of to present art now. It's amazing. So I really still I enjoy looking at art. I still love researching art, but I'm okay with
Mhm.
where I am in the art world.
Okay. Okay. That's good that you reconcile that. Yeah. So how did you get into cosplay? How did that intersect? How did you
Woo! So I've
get to cosplay?
always been a nerd, just didn't know that it was levels to it as it is right now. As a little girl, I was always a little girl hanging out at like I love going to comic book shops, I love going to toy stores, and I thought that was it. Occasionally you would see like the weird guy in a cape going to play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, but I didn't think anything
Right.
of it. And my kids got really hardcore into anime when they were
Wow.
in middle school. Well, the oldest one when he was in middle school,
Hmm.
and we were going through this divorce process. He always looked so sad all the time. And I saw a advertisement for this thing called BlerdCon, and it's supposed to be
Mm,
a safe place for baby black nerds. I'm like, "Oh, that's us. Let's go check it out." And I
right.
was just in awe by all of these grown people walking around in costumes and playing around and being like who they wanted to be when they were little kids. And I'm like, oh.
Right.
And so the first year, he's dressed up in his costumes. I'm taking all the photos. And in the back of my head, I was resolute. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm buying a costume. I'm doing this next year. Halloween all
Yes.
year round? Like, no, no way. And we went and they were our people and they had jobs and they had family and they just were super nerds who loved their TV shows from when they were growing up.
All right.
And I started cosplaying, and the first year I finally decided to do it, I ended up in it's a now defunct magazine, but ESPN used to have a magazine called ESPN Undefeated, and they had a
Oh,
photographer there. And the guy was like, "Oh my God, I love your costume. You're Sailor Moon. Come be in our," and I signed the release and ended up in a magazine. And I'm like,
wow.
"What?" So, um, I just remember my kids, like we every year we plan for the whole year. Okay, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to be. I'm like, okay, we got 3 looks. We got 3 days. You're gonna do 6 looks. You're gonna do 3 looks. What are we doing? And I have gladly and proudly saved my money to invest. so they can experience this activity. They go to a lot of other different cons now, and they're pros. They don't need me anymore. They're young adults. But I still go. I still tap into my community. I still share my gifts with my community because there are a lot of little young kids who don't know that the turmoil and the anxiety and the depression that they're feeling, we can help with that. Like you have a community of
Right.
people to help you transition into your fullness as a black person, as a queer person, as an engineer, as a developer. There's someone there who's developed their costume and doesn't even know that they're an engineer. I mean, they blowing smoke and got green eyes and
Wow.
these New York Comic Con style builds in the black
Right.
community. We didn't know we had those. And now it's status quo almost, and it's fantastic to see.
Wow. So BlerdCon is in New York?
No, actually, it's in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So not far at all.
Nope, nope, nope.
And you said it's a couple of days?
Yes, so this year's in March. I want to say it's March 8th through 10th or 8th, 7th through 9th, somewhere in that weekend. So, I don't have an affiliate link for that, but I will plug that it's coming up in March, and it's always a good time.
Okay. And you're there, you said you do the coloring
Yes,
workshop
yes.
each
So
of
I
the days, or is it a particular day?
It's a particular day. I want to say I'm like Saturday at like 10 p.m. It's late night coloring for people who are
Oh,
just overwhelmed from being on the floor all day and they just want to color before they go to bed to transition. And it's always
yeah.
a good time.
That sounds like fun. Wow. Okay. So if you could whisper in your 5-year-old self's ear today, what would you say?
It's going to be better than we thought.
Mm, that's good. Simple and to the point, right?
It is. I had a great childhood growing up. I really
Hmm.
did. And when my mother passed, my dad did everything he could to continue her line in her expectations and but it's hard being a single parent out here.
Yeah.
And you run into people who have their own cognitions of what they think you should be. You should be this, and you should be that, and you should be shaped into this. And nobody can tell you what you're going to be when you grow up. You don't even know what you were going to be when you grow up. And I mean, I've had 5 lives. I'm not even 50 yet. I've had 5 different careers already. So
Wow.
you
Yeah.
just keep going. If you have a mind to learn and a mind to grow, life is just beginning at 5. You don't even know what's going on.
Right. Right. That's true. That's so true. And so I didn't touch on your self-care facilitator piece. How
Yes.
does that
That
how does that work?
that's very much part of the mindfulness part of what I do.
Okay.
It is I consider the mindfulness exploration part of my self-care journey. It was finding out who I was after divorce. I had been married for 10 years. I've been momming for, 20 some years.
Hmm.
I think every woman needs to know what they like to do, what
Hmm.
brings them joy, and it should come to you without being a side hustle. It should come to you without somebody demanding of you that you entertain them through your side hustle or your journey.
Mm,
And I feel like we just got into this culture where everything you do is profitable. People don't even like to sew
right.
anymore because a friend of mine makes my little head wraps and she stopped making them because she doesn't like sewing it. She was done selling them at conventions and things.
Oh, wow.
Um, I think we just need to focus on the things that don't burn us out and
Right.
that self-care journey is so important. Just to sit for an hour and do nothing, even if you can only do it twice a week, is such a blessing.
Right.
It's a blessing if you can afford to do it.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing. You don't think about it as being that integral to your health, but it really is until you actually sit and do nothing. Because it's so easy to have something going all the time, something playing in the background, watching something. You're moving, you're doing this, you're so easy. But yeah, that
Even just to
self-care is so important.
sit and have a small praise session by yourself
Yes.
and just say thank you. Like, oh my goodness, like A friend of mine,
Right.
she consistently says, I am living and sitting in answered prayers.
Yes, that's
And when
good.
you process that, oh my goodness, I prayed to be comfortable. You ain't say
Yes.
what kind of comfortable. Listen, he don't got God, universe, whatever you call it, it is the same entity, and you are getting that love back. When
Yeah.
the love that you put into the world comes back to you, and you also have to love yourself as much as you love others.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my goodness. So this has been a full episode. I mean, you've touched on so many things. We didn't really, I didn't ask you about the pop culture junkie piece. So speak to that just a little bit.
Well, I think to be honest, I think my BlerdCon cosplay part is part of my pop culture.
Okay.
Um, I cosplay characters that I love and have loved my whole life. I grew up on the movies. I was in watching the Goonies and the Beetlejuice and all the cartoons, She-Ra, Care Bears, all that. Gr Growing up, I loved television, and my parents afforded us the opportunity to go see our movies and go to Disney World and all these things, go to Sesame Place, all those weird
Yes.
things that were available. And so now as an adult,
Right.
I still love that stuff. I am a
Yeah.
huge Star Wars fan,
Wow.
huge Japanese anime fan,
Okay.
love love Marvel movies.
Mm.
I love art. So, whenever a new art
Yeah.
exhibition's opening up, my kids and I are there. We are there.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I love to read. I believe that reading is so much of what we have going on in pop culture, especially reading books from Black women. They're not
Hmm.
advertised and they're not on the front shelves of Barnes and Noble like everything else, but we're getting there and we're growing our
Yeah.
voices. And reading a book, at least two books a month by a Black woman, is a priority for me. And it's part of
Okay.
that's part of that pop culture, reading, listening to music. I love music.
Yes.
Surprisingly love Glorilla. Her album that just came out is so much
Okay.
it's so much fun. And it's not I'm like I feel like an internet auntie, like I'm cheering these girls. I love
Yeah.
Cardi B. I love Megan Thee
Okay.
Stallion. And, there's some motivational words in what those girls are saying. And when you take off the packaging, get past the packaging, I love like Gorilla said, that's why I love tomorrow, because we got stuff to do tomorrow. And I'm like, go ahead, girl. And
Right.
so, yeah, I just don't, I think it's definitely what keeps me young at heart. It,
Hmm.
my sons will come in my room and like, what are you listening to? What you know about that? And we sit and just talk about music, and it keeps you also tied to the politics of what's going on with that time period.
Yes.
Even like watching G.I. Joe the other day, you realize at the end of G.I. Joe, there's a commercial giving the kids that one thing they needed to know at the end of
Hmm.
every episode. It's like, and then they say, "Go, Joe." That was
Yeah.
part of the American educational system. For those cartoons to be on television, they had to teach something at some point in time, some sort of lesson in all of those
Wow.
episodes. They didn't want to tell those kids to look both ways before crossing the street. But they had to, and so it's a
Right.
signal of the times that we were in that the parents weren't teaching us nothing. We had to learn through TV. And my other baby, like I wanted to thank LeVar Burton every time I see him because reading Rainbow changed so many lives for
Mm,
children
yes.
and made
Yes.
reading accessible for all of us. That's a huge part of not just American pop culture, but like just Black culture. We got to see a Black
Right.
man on TV every week to tell us about reading, and it was the best part ever.
Yes.
So, but yes,
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
You did. You did. And you just showed how everything is intertwined. Every part of what you're interested in, all the things you enjoy, they just weave into each other so well.
Absolutely.
And it's really nice. So I want to thank you for joining me today. Could you tell us where we can find you?
Ooh. You can find me online at baronessbree.com, BaronessBree.com. And you can find links to my newsletters, my podcast, my YouTube channel, my Twitch channel, and all of the projects I have going on currently.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Bree.
No, thank you.